You know, if you walked into a high-tech bioengineering lab today and just asked them to, like, invent the ultimate biological maintenance system, there's a very specific expectation of what they'd hand you.
Oh, absolutely. You'd expect some kind of science fiction gadget.
All right, you'd assume they'd slide this little glass vial across the table, and it would contain, I don't know, some kind of microscopic nanobot. You'd swallow it, and this tiny machine would just cruise through your bloodstream, physically rebuilding bone tissue, neutralizing cellular toxins, fixing your fuel lines.
And repairing the whole engine all at once, yeah.
Exactly. And naturally, it would probably cost about $1 billion a dose.
Right. And it would also require, decades of clinical trials just to figure out how to keep a machine like that from accidentally shutting down your kidneys in the process.
Yeah, minor side effects.
Just a small one. But, we really have this profound, almost automatic bias toward complex laboratory-made solutions when we think about human health. Like, if it doesn't come out of a sterile lab in a synthetic capsule, we tend to really underestimate its power.
We do. But then, you step into the world of botanical science, and suddenly you realize that nature might have actually beaten Silicon Valley to the punch by, like, a few thousand years.
Oh, for sure.
And if you are someone who keeps an eye on the wellness world, you have absolutely noticed a specific green powder taking over lately. It's called Moringa. You see it in smoothies, you see it in wellness shots, and it's constantly being hyped up as the miracle tree.
The miracle tree, yeah, you see that everywhere.
Everywhere. But if you're anything like me, whenever you hear the word miracle attached to a health product, your internal alarm bells just start ringing. Start wondering if it's, just a fleeting trend or there's actual measurable fire behind all this smoke.
Well, your alarm bell should be ringing, honestly. The wellness space is, it's the absolute definition of a marketing minefield.
Right.
It is incredibly easy for a brand to just slap the word superfood on the label, charge a massive premium, and rely entirely on the placebo effect.
Which is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are looking at a comprehensive breakdown of the actual biochemistry behind Moringa oleifera, as well as the clinical rationale behind specific whole food supplements like Moringa Magic. We're just bypassing the vague marketing claims today.
I love that. Let's get into the mechanics.
Yeah, we want to decode what is happening on a molecular level inside this plant. How does it physically interact with your cells when you ingest it? And why is there this massive industry-wide shift happening right now toward whole food supplementation?
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand the hype, we really have to start with the botanical anomaly of where this thing actually comes from.
Right. So Moringa oleifera is a fast-growing, highly drought-resistant tree, and it's native to parts of India and Africa.
Mhm.
And it possesses this almost freakish trait in the botanical world, which is that essentially the entire organism is edible and biologically active.
Like the whole tree. The whole tree. The seeds, the pods, the flowers, the roots, they all have these distinct nutritional profiles. But when you really dive into the clinical literature, the leaves emerge as the true gold mine. They possess a nutrient density that honestly defies typical plant biology.
When we talk about nutrient density here, we aren't just talking about like a little sprinkle of vitamin C to stave off a cold, right?
Not at all.
Because the roster of vitamins and minerals in the sources, it reads like the back of an engineered multivitamin, except it literally just grew out of the dirt.
Mm.
You are looking at staggering concentrations of vitamin A, which is foundational for maintaining cellular, vision, and immune response. You've got vitamin C stepping in for tissue repair.
Yeah, massive amounts of calcium for bone matrix density, too.
Right, and potassium, which is a completely non-negotiable mineral for electrical conductivity in your heart
Right.
and muscles, plus a really heavy dose of iron to maintain core energy synthesis.
It's an incredible list, but while that list is formidable, a well-curated, massive salad could theoretically provide a similar baseline of those specific vitamins.
Sure, if you ate a giant bowl of it.
Right. But the detail in the biochemical analysis that genuinely forces nutritionists to do a double take is the protein content.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
This is what made me stop reading and literally reread the paragraph. Moringa leaves contain a highly significant amount of plant-based protein.
Which is wild.
It is wild. Finding usable, dense protein in a leafy green is incredibly rare. You expect protein from like a legume or a nut or a seed. Finding it in a leaf feels like I don't know, an evolutionary glitch.
It really does. But what's fascinating here is that the true biological power isn't found in any single one of those isolated nutrients. The magic, to borrow the marketing term, is in their synergy.
Synergy, let's talk about that.
Yeah, because human biology does not operate in a vacuum. Your digestive tract doesn't just absorb one vitamin at a time, check it off a list, and move on. It thrives when nutrients arrive together, physically interacting with one another to unlock absorption. And iron is actually the perfect example of this.
Okay, let's look closely at that because I always hear that, spinach has iron, but the human body can barely absorb it.
Exactly. That is a fundamental issue with plant-based iron, which is known clinically as non-heme iron. So in its raw botanical state, non-heme iron exists in what chemists call a ferric state, or F3+.
Okay, F3+.
Right. And the problem is your intestinal walls are essentially acting like a highly exclusive bouncer at a club, and they do not easily let F3+ into the bloodstream.
You're just doing it away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In order to actually absorb that iron, your body has to convert it into a ferrous state, or F2+.
So it literally has to physically change the chemical structure of the mineral just to get it through the door.
Yes, exactly. And to make that conversion, your gut requires what's called an electron donor. It needs a compound to come along and just hand over an electron to the iron. And vitamin C, or ascorbic acid, is the ultimate electron donor.
Oh, wow.
So when you ingest moringa, you aren't just ingesting iron, you are simultaneously ingesting a massive dose of vitamin C. They arrive in the gut together.
Oh, I see.
The vitamin C instantly donates an electron, converts the iron from F3+ to Fe2+, and just escorts it directly across the intestinal wall. The plant is literally providing the lock and the key at the exact same time.
I love that concept. It's like a construction site.
Okay.
Like you can't build a house with just a massive pile of nails. Doesn't matter if you have a million of them. You just have this useless, rusting pile of metal sitting on the grass.
Right. You're not getting anywhere with just nails.
Exactly. You need the lumber, the concrete, and the nails all working together at the exact same time to actually build a structure.
Yeah.
So moringa isn't just one raw material. It's like the whole hardware store showing up at the site simultaneously prepackaged with the instruction manual.
That visual hits the nail on the head, no pun intended. Because nutrition is fundamentally about building and repairing the body. But, building the tissue is only half of the biological equation. The other half is defending it from constant microscopic degradation. And that brings the analysis directly to the second major mechanism of moringa, which is its antioxidant profile.
And we really need those defenders right now.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the medical data, there is this invisible enemy we are fighting literally every single second of the day, which are free radicals.
Yes.
They sound like a rogue 1970s punk band, honestly, but they're actually these highly unstable molecules tearing through our bodies.
Yeah.
And modern life is basically a free radical factory.
It really is.
They are triggered by urban air pollution, by the highly processed seed oils in our diets, by psychological stress from our jobs, and just by the fact that frankly, nobody is getting enough sleep anymore.
Nobody. And to understand the sheer destructive power of a free radical, you have to kind of zoom in and look at its atomic structure. So a free radical is a molecule that is missing an electron in its outer shell. It is chemically desperate. Because it is unstable, it aggressively tears through your body, violently stealing electrons from your healthy cell walls, from your proteins, and even your DNA, just to stabilize itself.
Jeez.
Yeah, this cellular vandalism is what medical science calls oxidative stress. It accelerates the physical aging process, it degrades your organ function, and it acts as a foundational driver for almost every single chronic disease we know of.
Enter the biological defenders.
Exactly.
Because the literature highlights some incredibly heavy-hitting antioxidants found in abundance in moringa. We're talking quercetin, chlorogenic acid, and beta-carotene. But instead of just, listing them, let's explain the physical mechanism. Like, how are these specific compounds actually stopping that cellular vandalism?
Well, antioxidants are essentially the ultimate biological philanthropists. Remember how that free radical is desperately missing an electron?
Right.
Antioxidants are unique molecules because they actually have extra electrons to spare and they can give them away without becoming unstable themselves.
Oh, that's incredibly convenient.
It's perfect. So when a molecule of quercetin encounters a free radical, It just voluntarily donates an electron. It completely neutralizes the threat before that free radical can tear into your healthy tissue.
Wow.
So these compounds aren't just floating around your bloodstream aimlessly. They are actively patrolling your system, disarming these molecular bombs, and creating a safe environment for your cells to replicate and repair.
Okay, so that elegantly handles the oxidative stress part. But the data also leans heavily into how Moringa tackles inflammation. And I have to push back on this a little bit because, well, I feel like inflammation gets a really bad rap in the modern wellness space.
It does get demonized a lot.
Right. Like, wait, isn't inflammation just our immune system doing its job? If I accidentally slice my finger while I'm chopping vegetables, it gets red, swollen, and inflamed because my body is sending blood and fluid and white blood cells to fix the tissue. Why are we constantly trying to eradicate it?
Yeah, that is a really crucial distinction to make. Acute inflammation, that redness and swelling when you cut your finger, or the fever you get when you're fighting a virus, is a brilliant, necessary evolutionary response.
It's keeping us alive.
Exactly. It is your body's emergency medical team rushing to a localized scene to save your life. The epidemic we are facing today is not acute inflammation. It is chronic systemic inflammation.
It's like the emergency alarm getting stuck in the on position, just blasting 24/7.
That's exactly it. When your biology is constantly bombarded by lack of sleep, poor diet, and environmental toxins, the immune system never turns the alarm off. It stays in this low-grade, exhausting state of high alert. And over years and decades, that simmering chronic inflammation gets confused and actually starts attacking healthy tissue, degrading your joints, your blood vessels, and your brain.
Okay, so how does a plant like Moringa intervene without just shutting off the alarm system completely? Because we still need the acute response if we actually get hurt.
Right. And the plant deploys these incredibly sophisticated natural compounds, specifically a class called isothiocyanates.
Isothiocyanates, got it.
Yeah, and if you take a pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory, like, say, ibuprofen, it works by violently blocking specific enzymes, effectively cutting the wire to the alarm system entirely.
Which is why you don't want to be on it forever.
Exactly. But isothiocyanates work entirely differently. They act more like a biological thermostat. They interact with specific genetic pathways in your cells, like the NRF2 pathway, which actually senses when the immune system is overheating.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. Instead of blocking your immune response, these compounds signal your cells to produce their own anti-inflammatory proteins, gently turning down the dial on that chronic simmering inflammation so your body can return to a balanced resting state. It's all about restoring cellular equilibrium, not forcing pharmaceutical suppression.
And restoring that equilibrium is just a perfect bridge into how Moringa acts as an antidote to two of the most prevalent modern health crises, erratic blood sugar and heart strain.
They are deeply connected.
Yeah, because there is a direct causal link there. When your cells are constantly inflamed, they basically start ignoring the knock at the door from insulin. This creates insulin resistance, which means the modern lifestyle is essentially a recipe for metabolic disaster.
Unfortunately, yes.
We eat these highly processed, low-fiber foods, our glucose levels spike to the moon, and then an hour later, our cells still haven't absorbed the energy, and we crash so hard we can barely keep our eyes open at our desks.
And it is an incredibly exhausting, damaging cycle for your cellular engine to endure day after day. Moringa offers a much more stable, mechanically sound approach to metabolic energy. The botanical research reveals that it physically slows down the absorption of glucose in your digestive tract.
And it achieves that interception through one of those specific antioxidants we mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
chlorogenic acid.
Yes, exactly. Chlorogenic acid is a massive multitasker. It operates as an antioxidant, but in the gut, it has been shown to actually inhibit an enzyme called alpha-glucosidase.
Alpha-glucosidase.
Right. And this is the enzyme responsible for breaking down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars. By inhibiting that enzyme, chlorogenic acid literally delays the release of sugar into your bloodstream.
I picture it like putting heavy-duty shock absorbers on a roller coaster.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Like, it doesn't stop the ride entirely. Your body's still going to eventually process and absorb the food you eat, but it mechanically smooths out those massive, nauseating drops in your blood sugar. You get this steady, sustained, slow-release glide instead of a terrifying plummet.
That's a great way to look at it. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, a smooth, highly regulated metabolic engine is the absolute best way to protect your cardiovascular system. Heart health isn't some isolated system operating in a vacuum, you know?
Yeah.
It's deeply intertwined with your blood sugar spikes and your systemic inflammation levels.
Everything affects everything.
Exactly. And Moringa acts as a long-term architectural support system for the heart from three very distinct biochemical angles.
Right. First, you have the antioxidants we discussed, which are neutralizing those free radicals and reducing the oxidative damage to the delicate inner lining of the blood vessels themselves, basically keeping them flexible instead of stiffening up.
Right. Second, you look at the lipid profile. Moringa contains high levels of plant sterols. And these are fascinating botanical compounds because structurally, on a molecular level, they look almost identical to human cholesterol.
It's like a biological decoy.
Yes.
I imagine it like a decoy car taking up a premier parking space in your gut. If the plant sterol parks in the absorption receptor, the actual dietary cholesterol has nowhere to park, so it has to keep driving right out of your digestive system as waste.
That is exactly the mechanism. By structurally mimicking cholesterol, plant sterols competitively block its absorption, naturally keeping your lipid levels balanced. And then third, you have that incredibly high potassium content we mentioned at the start.
Which regulates the heartbeat.
Right. Potassium is a critical signaling mineral that tells the smooth muscle tissue in your blood vessel walls to relax, physically widening the vessel and regulating your blood pressure.
Okay, but here is where the science takes a deeply pragmatic turn.
Mm-hmm.
We have explored this incredible roster of nutrients, the, electron-donating antioxidants, the biological thermostats modulating inflammation, the metabolic shock absorbers.
Yeah.
But from a purely mechanical standpoint,
Yeah.
absolutely none of it matters if our bodies just flush the material out. The delivery mechanism is everything. You aren't what you eat, you are what you actually absorb. And your gut is the central processing plant for that entire operation.
Exactly. The gut dictates your immune function, your energy synthesis, and your nutrient uptake. Moringa supports this central processing plant physically by providing insoluble dietary fiber, which acts as a mechanical sweeping system to keep the digestive tract moving.
Keeping things clear.
Right, while those anti-inflammatory isothiocyanates soothe the mucosal lining, creating an optimal environment for actual nutrient absorption.
And this biological reality leads me to a really blunt question. One I think anyone listening with a skeptical mind is probably wondering right now.
Let's hear it.
We've identified all these amazing compounds inside Moringa. The vitamin A, the potassium, the quercetin, the chlorogenic acid. Science has mapped them perfectly. So why can't a pharmaceutical company just synthesize a massive multivitamin pill in a lab, pack it with those exact isolated molecular compounds, and sell it? Like, why do we actually need the physical leaf of a tree?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question of modern clinical nutrition, and the answer comes down to a single critical concept, which is bioavailability.
Bioavailability.
Right. When a chemist isolates vitamin C in a sterile lab and presses it into a hard synthetic pill, it is structurally naked. It is entirely divorced from how it appears in the natural world.
Because it's missing the synergy.
Exactly. When you swallow that synthetic pill, your digestive system looks at this isolated molecule and often doesn't quite know what to do with it. It lacks the surrounding cofactors, the specific enzymes, the water, and the fiber that always accompany it in a living plant.
So it's like handing a construction crew an incredibly detailed architectural blueprint, but it's written in a language they don't understand.
That's a perfect analogy.
Does the synthetic pill have the raw molecular information, but it's missing the biological translation enzymes that the whole plant naturally provides?
Yes. Because moringa is a whole, structurally complete plant food, the nutrients arrive in your gut in their natural evolutionary context.
Yeah.
Your body recognizes the code immediately.
It knows what to do with it.
It possesses the biological translation enzymes for that exact structure. It processes those nutrients without having to fight through artificial chemical binders, glues, and synthetic fillers, meaning it absorbs the material far more efficiently.
That makes so much sense.
And this profound difference in bioavailability is exactly why the clinical landscape is seeing such a massive shift away from synthetic, isolated vitamins and leaning heavily toward whole food-based botanical supplementation.
Okay, so bringing all of this advanced biochemistry down to earth, what does this actually mean for your daily routine? Knowing the molecular science is fantastic, but let's look at the sheer reality of your Tuesday morning.
Right, the practical application.
You are commuting, you are managing a career, you are trying to keep your family life together. sourcing high-quality, fresh Moringa oleifera leaves from the tropics every single day, figuring out how to properly prepare them in your kitchen without applying too much heat and destroying the water-soluble vitamins, and guessing the right botanical dosages. I mean, that is completely unsustainable. You'd need a part-time job just to manage your botanical intake.
Absolutely. Friction is where most ambitious health protocols go to die. If an intervention isn't highly convenient, human nature dictates it simply won't happen. And this is where products like Moringa Magic enter the clinical discussion. The purpose of a supplement like this isn't to be some mystical cure-all. It is a pragmatic, formatting solution. It exists to solve the consistency and degradation problem.
Right, because taking a massive dose of antioxidants once a month when you happen to find fresh leaves at a specialty market doesn't fundamentally change your cellular health. It requires daily compounded intervention.
It does. By utilizing techniques like freeze drying or shade drying, supplements can arrest the natural degradation process of the plant. A powdered format locks in that highly complex, synergistic code of nutrients we've been discussing.
It preserves the blueprint.
Exactly. It stabilizes the biochemistry, ensuring that you aren't reliant on the wildly fluctuating quality of grocery store produce. It takes a profoundly complex biological intervention and formats it into a frictionless, measurable daily habit.
And this practical application speaks directly to why this specific botanical and the broader shift toward whole food supplementation is exploding in popularity right now. The cultural and scientific mindset is evolving. We're collectively waking up to the biological limits of highly processed, isolated synthetic vitamins.
We really are.
We are realizing that waiting for our metabolic engines to break down and then trying to react to illness with targeted pharmaceuticals is exhausting, expensive, and often just too late. People want preventative systemic health. They want to maintain the engine's integrity before the check engine light ever comes on.
Right.
And Moringa fits that clinical shift perfectly because it doesn't just target a localized headache or a singular digestive issue. It floods the entire biological system with the raw materials needed for self-repair.
It aligns entirely with the philosophy of long-term cellular resilience rather than short-term symptom masking.
So, to synthesize this entire deep dive, what the data presents is a single drought-resistant tree that delivers an incredibly rare bioavailable density of essential nutrients and plant-based protein.
Yep.
It deploys powerful electron-donating antioxidants to actively neutralize oxidative cellular damage. It uses complex isothiocyanates to act as biological thermostats, gently modulating chronic inflammation rather than chemically cutting the wire to your immune system.
Perfectly said.
It utilizes chlorogenic acid to act as a metabolic shock absorber, delaying glucose absorption to stabilize your energy. It deploys plant sterols as structural decoys to protect your heart, and it delivers all of this in a whole food format that your gut's translation enzymes actually know how to read. Formats like Moringa Magic simply take that overwhelming biochemical complexity and stabilize it into something you can effortlessly scoop into your morning routine.
This raises an important question, though.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if our human bodies evolved over millions of years to be so perfectly calibrated to receive this highly complex, synergistic code of nutrients from whole plants, we have to look closely at where those plants are actually coming from.
The source.
Right. The intricate synergy inside a moringa leaf is entirely dependent on the soil it grows in. The plant has to draw those base minerals up from the earth to build that complex biological architecture. But with modern, hyper-industrialized agriculture, heavily depleting global soil microbiomes, and stripping the earth of its native mineral density, are we slowly erasing the raw materials nature needs to write this code?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We can shift our focus toward brilliant whole food supplementation all we want, but if the earth itself is being stripped of its own biological synergy, how long until the plants simply have nothing left to pass on to us?
Wow. That is a deeply sobering thought. Are we finally cracking nature's perfect code just as the ink starts running dry?
It's something to think about.
That is definitely something to chew on next time you're staring down the produce aisle or looking at a supplement label. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the hype, keep demanding to know the actual mechanisms behind the science, and we will see you next time.